we opened up the Burr presidency here with the Mexican-American War. Now, we didn't meet the requirement, which is Texas admitted, so another card came up. Then Illinois came up, and I got lucky here. I offered a couple simple positions, Secretary of War and Special Envoy, to party members in exchange for not only their support in Illinois, although buying that is of some worth definitely for me as well, but for a more general, as long as we're not, trying to do anything fairly extreme here or deeply against your interest, you'll support me in general. This is a big deal for Burr because unlike, say, back before when we had the Dallas administration, he could assign all kind of positions to his people. Well, Burr doesn't have many people to assign positions to. He has Knox, who he'd like to make Secretary of State for the 2 points. But in this case, he managed to get Illinois passed. And since that's just his requirement, he didn't really need anything other than the congressional vote, which I've determined passed. In my own vague sort of way, we're going to see Illinois showing up here. And Illinois is going to push over here. We don't have Indiana yet. Illinois is actually disconnected. It's not worth any votes, but if someone ends up stuck like poor Webster was, at least they can grab a few more votes that way. Excuse me. Now the Webster-Ashburton Treaty. Oh, what the hell was this? Treaty with Great Britain along the border of Canada and the Great Lakes. Yeah. Okay. So this will require a Secretary of State and Congress with a popularity involved. And, this is well within the agreement. So I'm going to appoint Polk as Secretary of State. And I think, and there's two popularity, I think we can kind of assume this passes. It's only worth an additional popularity to each of them. And I'll put a little black cube underneath to indicate there's two white there. And that doesn't cause anything. A failure would have caused problems of public support leaving the party. So we'll go to another one, and it's the Oregon Treaty. But first we have a death. Now the Oregon Treaty has two parts, 5440 or fight, or 59 or 49th parallel, and depending on how far we can get it depends on how much prestige we get off of it. I think our congressional proponents are largely interested in not failing this, but also not allowing it to go into too popularity. But let's see who dies, because it could well be Aaron Burr. And it is going to be the oldest, and I'm not sure if that's Burr or not. It's got to be... He's pretty close. He's in his 90s at this point. It looks like it's going to be him. Which means this is not going to be his resolution, because he's no longer president. And that's going to jump it over to... who's vice president now? William Henry Harrison. And the Oregon Treaty ends up passing because now Polk is here and the president's interested in it. That keeps that alignment together. A new position, Secretary of the Treasury, to one of the newcomers from Illinois, Stephen Douglas, comes into play. And he was willing to accept the secretaryship for that single vote, and that gave them a big enough coalition. It's actually a bigger coalition than it was before at this point. And then Southwest slavery was extended, and I gotta look up my number. I lose 2 political points because that killed off John Quincy Adams. Oop, that's popularity. Hope I haven't been making that kind of mistake for a while. This is an interesting choice. I succeed if it's president and Congress. Well, the president doesn't really have the capability to succeed at this. And he can try to fulfill it, though, and give IP over to Daniel Webster, who's no longer the conservative leader. To James Polk, who is now the new conservative leader at 12 versus Webster's 8. Webster wasn't going to win any elections anyway, right? Still. So, I'm not terribly interested in trying to fail this and give him points. I don't have a vice president to punt it to, and I don't really need to. This doesn't have a penalty if I go for it. So, it'll just go to the next deck. Unless somebody makes me some kind of offer that I can't even imagine, because the president is the person who has to come up with the level of success, and he's only a 1. He could get it up to a 3, but he can't get it to the 4 that it needs to. So someone would have to at least give him an influence to get him to 4. He gets a popularity off that. Worth it if someone wants to, but, well, Polk would love to, but I don't think anybody else is willing to throw that support in for free. So, that is a failure that goes to the next deck. And now we quickly move to the Treasury. And then the election. The election is going to be an interesting one. Harrison can't really run for re-election, but he doesn't count as having been elected. I got to find myself a new liberal leader. Got 4 there. 6 looks good. Do I hear 7? Do I hear 7? 6. Older 6. Martin Van Buren's the party leader now. Hey, coming out of New York, that's not too terrible. I think I'd rather Winfield Scott out of Virginia as in terms of supporting the Liberals' chances of winning, but without the 12th Amendment in the game, it's not a normal election process. All right, onward. We're at election time, and it's chaos. First off, single-party rule is still in place. The party leader is James Knox Polk. He's automatically on the ticket. The next 3 people have the option to enter. And those are Daniel Webster. I'm throwing in the ring. What the hell? DeWitt Clinton. And William Henry Harrison. Each of them is allowed now to pick a vice presidential character. In order to do this, we're going to be using separate cubes, markers, whatever, for each different person who's on the board. Now, multiple people could pick the same vice presidential character. The vice presidential candidates are chosen in what order? Any statement. And they all are going to run on the same rules, which is the top 2 vote getters are the ones who end up with the president and then vice president. I don't think there's an ordering to this, given the tendency of the popular public support for the ordering under normal elections. I'm going to say that the weakest of them, which is actually William Henry Harrison, the current president, has to pick his vice president first. Now I'm looking at, I'm in Ohio and Massachusetts. I think it would be a good idea to put John Tyler on the ticket. Doesn't really matter that he's Harrison's vice president. He may end up being Webster's vice president as well. And the point is, once I've added him to the ticket, other people can choose him as well. So, for example, James Polk can choose one of the already running vice presidents and thus not muddy the waters even more than they are. This is the mess we have. All right. Polk is red in Tennessee. Webster is blue, and it's hard to tell because I've got black up there too in New England. Clinton is purple in New York. Black is going to be cut off completely. That's Pierce very quickly. Harrison is orange. Tyler is green in Virginia, very promising because he's in the center of everything. I said Pierce was black, and then Breckinridge is white down in Kentucky. And it's basically going to be a race here for who gets what. Now, one question was, did I really want to put Pierce into this? You know, it's too late now. But he's not going to make it out, and he really had no choice, except that he's closing out purple, which is Clinton, from being able, his own buddy, from being able to be on the ticket. So you know what? If I throw Pierce off the ticket, I can choose, say, Tyler as well, and get rid of some competition for those New England votes that I'm almost assured, if blue, which is Webster, makes his way out. So by ditching Pierce, I think things come over for the best there. The question is, do I want Tyler there, or would I rather have a shot in the South and clutter things up by putting Rufus King into place? And I think I'm going to put King into place. Okay, so let's look at what we do. We see Polk moving his way into the Carolinas with the thought of, well, there's a lot of votes there at least, because we really don't know what kind of chaos this is. Webster and Clinton spreading their position out through here pretty nicely. Harrison moves from Ohio into Virginia. Virginia is not the most votes that he can get. He might have been better off going into Pennsylvania, except the thing is, he was looking at, well, there's more votes to the south of Virginia than there are to, you know, the north and east of Pennsylvania total. So that's kind of a tough call there. Tyler goes up into Ohio. He probably would have been maybe, I don't know. It's so hard to tell. But they've created such blocks that poor Breckinridge has nowhere to go and ended up in Illinois. And, well, King should have gone before Breckinridge, actually, and he spreads out into Tennessee, closing Breckinridge off. Whew. We have one interesting card. Clinton and or King have the ability to play with the Know Nothing Party in Maryland, which will wipe Maryland off the map, essentially. Come point time, but it doesn't give him an out through there, so he may or may not be terribly interested in that. Basically, does it give Clinton something worthwhile? Now we see it going quite a bit further. Clinton pushed his way down into Maryland, as far as south as he can basically go because of the blocks, and we got green. That's Tyler slipped up that way. Because he can't go further south because Polk slipped into the Carolinas. We'll see how it all counts up pretty soon. What absolute chaos. The total votes are here. Clinton at 123, Webster at 110. Everyone else pretty low. Who won? The big North again. But that's because the rest of the country was so fractious that the Northeast was able to take this one. So, I'll assign those positions, and we'll see where we go from there, and who the party leader is, and all kind of crap like that. And Polk, or whatever you want to call it, orange, is actually past purple for the lead at this point in terms of total points. And given the public support situation, is better poised to become president, to become powerful, important in any sort of way, than good old Van Buren over here for purple. And that's probably pretty much where they're stuck, although actually he's sitting on Thomas Hart Benton, who might be of some value there in Missouri. Craziness. Still in a dominating position after the card draft. There's an interesting situation here. Yellow have Harper's Ferry and the Dred Scott decision, which they can play both of them. They could end the game right now. The problem is they wouldn't win. So, of course, they're not going to do that. But having those two cards in their hand means if it looks like they're ahead in card drafting next turn, which is, you know, the only time I bother to count all the points, they'll be able to end the game immediately. In fact, if they get a big bonus, say working with President Clinton, I'll have to recount, if I can remember, comparing them to orange and purple. Those are the two main competition. Although maybe I have to think about blue too, if he manages to gain any points. Speaking of which, I'm planning on doing a duel. I was going to resolve that right away, but I realized I got to start with the president. I thought the president was over there, but he's not no more. Up a little, and I read this purple as if it was conservative. That's a liberal counter. All right, we're going for the duel. We're going to try to kill. We got to go for a military man, so we're going to have Breckinridge going after good old Winfield Scott, because Scott's dangerous. Now, the way the duel works is each player rolls a die, and a 5 or a 6 in either case is a successful killing. So Breckinridge and Scott, neither one does. The card is removed, I think, under either circumstance, whether or not there's a success to the duel. And I don't know. I don't terribly want to move these. And blues, the influence may be more worthwhile to blue at this end of the game point. A lot of people have been cashing their influence in for popularity. And then over here for Van Buren, his influence is unimportant. Well, I don't think he wants to spend that much. He has an important speech. Play that for another influence, I guess. Well, he's got someone of some value. Yeah. Well, actually, I didn't need two, do I? I'm going to play with these to try to reduce that. And the most effective and efficient ways to do that. I don't know if the turn's going to last all that long, though, but that's where we are. I'll take a quick look if anybody wants to bid. If I don't come back, they didn't, and I'll just start the next turn. But I'll let you know if somebody bid for some reason. I'm not sure. The main reason would be to move this. And Clinton's probably the most interested because he has to keep the chaos up to keep his presidency. He should have a little election marker because he's not the party leader at this point. As the only people with points are people who didn't want to spend them on their first turn. The possibility of getting a card, the cards pretty much suck. So everything good's been tapped out of them is kind of the impression. So we're going to what amounts to probably the extent of the DeWitt Clinton presidency. Advantage of a president who doesn't have many friends and doesn't have a lot of power, completely and absolutely in opposition to the reality, but because of the game victory mechanism and everything. Something like Texas comes up with a 2 popularity. It wasn't hard for DeWitt Clinton to get the two highest vote holders on board, and he felt no compunction about bringing them on with a job each. And this is a straight up trade. They each get 1 popularity, he gets 2. And it does restrict his, choices later. He also had to give them the positions where they wanted them. So Calhoun and Harrison, not just, I'm going to give you this job for a popularity. Mind all that. I've been away from the game for too long. Clinton doesn't have the kind of influence to get that passed, unless he has something. He has the congressional votes, but he's not capable. And being incapable is going to be a problem for a president. So he's just going to be a horrible president all around in this case. So no Texas for us. And the follow-up to that looks like it might be difficult to get past too. I looked at this and said, oh wait, what's the difficulty? And then I said, what's the difficulty on Texas? Well, not easy. Now I could have actually punted this to my vice president. Not that I want to. That would be Webster. He could have gotten Texas passed. But then I wouldn't get any rights to it. This one's buy the western lands from Texas. I have to create an envoy and get Congress to agree. This I can probably succeed in. It's only 1 popularity instead of the 2. So if I can find myself an envoy who is capable of getting a 3 difficulty thing passed. Now, Winfield Scott is certainly capable. Abe Lincoln would be capable, but they're both liberals. I'd rather find myself a conservative envoy. I think I'll offer the position over here. The problem is, of course, I get a free... the reason I'll go here is because he has influence to spend. I'll get a free vote, or he'll get a free popularity for getting the office, and then the 3 or 2 points of influence he has to expend on this gets him another popularity, whereas the yellow over here only gets 1 popularity, and of course Clinton only gets 1 as well. Red, not yellow. That one failed as well. I couldn't get the agreement from red to go along with it anymore, because blue getting 2 popularity is not the same as green getting 2 popularity from his point of view, even if blue has to spend for it. And now we have another problem, which is the Indian Removal Act. I have to have a Secretary of War who can do this. There are people who can. Polk obviously could handle it. I give him that position. If I hand out these others, nobody really minds too much Orange getting that. The advantage to this, and I want this one, is public support is 2 to the conservatives. The only way I can keep my presidency, as far as I can tell, because I'm not gaining a lot of popularity off of it, is to pump up the dominance. But the Chief Justice could cancel this. And there's also 3 IPs to the Conservative Party leader. It does not say the judicial review, but I think as long as that's not in place, the Chief Justice actually can't do shit about it. So, if we can get this passed, it'll work. And I'm going to try to forge that. Let's see. I think these guys are fine on it. Polk is almost certainly fine on it. See, these guys had a role. I don't see anyone terribly opposed except maybe Polk, because the next presidency is his, or the next nomination, if we don't go into dominance. And he may have an easier time running in a 2-party system than in a 1-party system. So, yeah, he'll go along with it too. So this is going to pass. He can do it immediately. and I'll just hand out the points for that. Now we're starting to get the kind of events that make you feel like Republic of Rome kind of does. Prevent Kansas-Nebraska Act. Okay. We had a possibility of Maine coming in, but we haven't extended the slavery, so. First of all, this is not easy. The president has to do it himself, and he doesn't have the influence to do it. It's 3 IP to the Conservative Party leader if it passes. It doesn't hurt his popularity. It'll hurt it if it fails. If he fails or ignores, tension goes up by 1, and the Conservative Party leader gets 1 IP. It's the tension that's the issue. It's not going to end the game, so people are not going to break their asses completely to try to prevent this. But they might be willing to vote for it and throw an influence in each. Some people, right? Because remember, Orange doesn't give a shit. Orange wins, I think, if the tension goes up. See, here's the problem. It's hard to tell who wins if the tension goes forward because, your green cubes are going to count against you, your votes are going to count against you. Polk doesn't exactly have a whole lot banked here. He has 1 vote and 4 of these green cubes, so he may want to get rid of his influence if it starts getting higher. But other people, at the very least, red knows he's behind. I believe blue knows he's behind. Purple and yellow feel like yellow probably is behind. So now it's time to try to curry favor and see, can we get this passed, even though it doesn't help anyone directly. Well, it actually does. It gives 3 IP to the guy who's probably at least willing to do anything about it. But it doesn't, to try to keep things going if you're far behind seems appealing. If you're close to victory, what do you care? Van Buren's sitting here on the Wilmot Proviso. He would love to see this passed. This is an action card, but it has to be voted by Congress. If the vote goes in favor of it, 2 influence go to the Conservative, but public support moves toward the Liberals, and that's what he'd really like to see. However, getting those votes looks impossible. This is just kind of a, oh wait, before we go to the election, could we do this? Although I did the Treasury already. And the answer really is no. There's 2 people who want this badly. Orange and purple. You might be able to see yellow come into this. But as you can see, the votes just aren't aligned. Yes, there are ways of getting more votes. And Polk is sitting on a whole bunch of them. But I don't think he likes it enough, needs it enough, to push for that, to tell you the truth. People who have the first buy-in for the elections, well, Polk obviously, Clinton is next. The next one's Webster. And then it comes to a tie between Harrison and Calhoun. And the only choice really in the matter is, do I want Webster to sit this out? And the answer is no. Or Harrison, for that matter. The answer is no in both cases, because they're really not going to be interfering with each other's votes, but they both may be dragging down other people's votes. And now the least popularity, that's Harrison, has to pick himself a vice presidential running mate. He must take one, and it can't be one of the presidential candidates. This is tough, but he'd rather pull his own people into play. The question is probably between the Tyler and Breckinridge. I'm happy with either of them. They both give me a lot of control. We liked Tyler being in there, so we're going to nominate him again. Breckinridge, let's see, Tyler was Virginia, which is a very powerful central location. We're going to really probably see something of a repeat of the last one if we start adding people like Tyler. What did we have otherwise here? King, Breckenridge was in it as well, though, and maybe I don't want to pick both of them this time. Just try to shake things up a little bit because I didn't get a presidency, and I feel maybe it was because the field was a little too cluttered. But yeah, Harrison picks Tyler. We go down. The next lowest is DeWitt Clinton, who again goes with William Rufus King as his running mate. He knows he can't win it, but he likes the idea of that kind of southern swing coming into this. And what else do we have here? Webster also picks Tyler as his running mate, thereby preventing the Breckenridge run-in. However, Polk wants to add somebody. Who does he want to add? He's all the way out in Tennessee. Over here. He's a little afraid of Stephen Douglas. Douglas has a powerful position, which is that his first piece will be placed in Illinois. Oh, then that's all he'll get. So, yeah, Douglas doesn't help at all. He won't be able to jump back to the East Coast stuff with any power. So I'm kind of looking for the person furthest away who could help me. You know what? I was gonna put Calhoun, but I'm gonna instead pick Millard Fillmore. I think Fillmore up in New York is the most interesting person, and basically, I can't get, Franklin Pierce to agree to run against Rufus King, or William Rufus King. I can't get Breckenridge to agree to go in, although that wouldn't be a problem. I don't really particularly want to say bring somebody from the yellow faction, but the red faction's still pretty weak. Fillmore seems like the best choice to me. I had been initially going with Calhoun, but I think Fillmore's a better pick. And here's our starting position with ordering. Polk is orange. He'll be going first if he wishes, which he probably does. Clinton, I've given him red up in New York. Webster has black in New England black because he's not going anywhere. I'm out of chips for black, but I can steal one and trade it for something else, I guess. I don't know. He'll be able to get into Illinois, and that's it. That's all the votes he's going to get. He's just really he's a spoiler preventing the New Yorkers from getting New England easily. And that's an interesting position because green over there is Fillmore in New York. Both of them could run down to Pennsylvania, but only one of them is going to get those big 36 New England votes. It's not like it used to be. But as we saw, Clinton was able to win this last time because the Northeast is powerful in this kind of split field with a lot of Southern and Westerners. Well, now with a lot of Northerners, he's going to have a more difficult time just sweeping the state. And, who knows? Fillmore might get himself a position he wouldn't get otherwise. Let's see, who else? Harrison, blue, in a position that I still think is tremendously potent. I'm surprised he didn't do well last time. Tyler, purple, again, a strong position, that kind of central position. I expected these to score a lot of points. The truth, though, is, I don't know. The Deep South, well, these are not bad states in terms of total votes. So it's kind of hard to... something... They're not really aligned right anymore. They all hook up fine. It's just I must have bumped them. King, I've given the white cubes down here in Alabama. I think he's going to get blocked off in the South, but we're not sure how badly. And of course, we talked about Fillmore before with green. We'll see how the initial expansion goes, and I got to look to make sure because people have some new cards now that might allow them to pull a trick out of their ass. So I screwed up in the last election. Illinois does connect to Kentucky, which makes sense. Therefore, people can't just jump there. There's a few more votes, 8 more votes, available to whoever gets into Kentucky. And here we're at the end of, I guess, 3 placements. And what we see is Polk has managed to get himself kind of down, almost blocked off in the South because of the Ohio situation. Purple, Tyler, slipped up into Ohio. That gets him a powerful position here. I guess the most interesting is blue. He looks very intriguing. That's William Henry Harrison, who's kind of shot his And remember, I said Ohio looks powerful. Well, with the little shifting of things, he's gotten himself running a nice string of good states there. Maybe somewhat surprising, King, now I doubt that he's going to be able to get president, but he slipped his way up into Kentucky, which of course gives him Illinois as well. Doesn't give him access to anything out beyond that, really. Fillmore ended up blocked off and going into New England, and I'm going to have to say our New Yorker, Clinton, he's pretty much totally clogged up here. He got shut down. Didn't get into Ohio. I think it's Tyler's fault that he didn't get into Ohio this time. Not much he could have done about that. I'm not sure. Last time we had a vote total of 123 for Clinton. That was not more than half. He shouldn't have won outright. I fucked up again. It was a potential answer. But the presidency, the president has to have more votes than any other candidate and more than 50% of the vote by adding up the total votes. If that doesn't happen, then we go to the tiebreaker situation, which we didn't get to. And it didn't happen. So, I fucked up last time. Again, it was a plausible answer that Clinton would win this. Nobody's going to be able to swing that many votes in this kind of a pool of election. So, if no nominee has a majority, then there is a tie, or there is a tie for the results. The candidate, we're going to go through the state voting situation. And any statesman may vote for any of the nominees involved in the tiebreaker. Who's in it, though? Any fourth placed vote getters drop out of consideration. Well, how about fourth place and worse? Because we have all these candidates here. So that means we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 80s, which means King, Fillmore, who did pretty well actually, and Webster, we only had 7, drop out. So we've got 4 people. This is, no, let's drop Tyler too. It's any fourth place, so Tyler's gone too. So we're down to Polk, Clinton, and Harrison. All very closely allied. And the tiebreaker is going to be states declared in order by the president. If this is an important thing, in particular, we have to worry about the states over here that are in the hands of the guy who doesn't have any real say in this. And of course also we've got Van Buren here, but New York's going to be a big deal no matter what. So this is going to be kind of tricky, and I'll probably just mark with cubes who wins each given state, as it's called. Clear the cubes off and mark that down. Luckily we have 3 good colored cubes, and we'll see who gets it. This form of voting that we're going to take place over here on a state-by-state basis by these guys has nothing to do with the election that just happened, except that the 3 people who are in contention are all the 3 top vote getters. I guess that makes a lot of sense. A lot of deal cutting happens in such a case. But let's look at the nature of the deal cutting. Okay, Orange was right up in the lead. We do not want Polk to win this election, like most of the players do not. Orange wants it, but everyone else would kind of rather not see that happen. So then the choice becomes between DeWitt Clinton, who's probably from the slightly weaker vote getter. I would have loved if Fillmore was in the race, because he would be the obvious sort of losing player choice, even though this guy's got a lot of political positions to give. And here's where it gets kind of rough, because DeWitt Clinton, I think Clinton is probably on the weaker player side, so there'd be an appeal to doing that. But there's a slight appeal to getting Harrison elected, which is that Clinton would then just disappear and would no longer be a threat to anyone. I think overall, though, the majority of the neutrals are willing to throw this vote towards Clinton. And this wasn't going to help him any. And we had another one kicking around the Liberty Party, which sure the hell wasn't going to help Fillmore, who was in New York anyway. So I'll go through all the skullduggery as we go, but I think Clinton's going to start kind of in the South and try to do these. This is kind of going to be a painful process. It always is, because you have to hunt down all the people from that state across the board and how many votes they have. Now, in a multiplayer game, that would be easier because you say, hey, anybody in Alabama? Okay, how many guys you got there? Let's decide your votes. Well, but it's tougher when doing it solo. And I'll tell you the truth, when you're playing something like this multiplayer, there's always someone who is not paying enough attention and doesn't catch the states as they're called, and then it's like, wait a minute, I meant to... What do you do with that? Oh, this is the map as it's filling out. Clinton's been calling states out. The red ones are ones he's won. The green ones are ones that have been toss-ups. I.e. their vote's just not going to count. So therefore, nobody's voted against Clinton yet. At this point, Harrison's getting kind of nervous and kind of tries to play towards the Clay side of things, although he's already lost Michigan, which was one of their bonus states, the cheap state that they can throw to whoever they like. And said, look, we'll form an alliance, we'll work together, right? I'll cut you into everything, we'll kind of split it evenly. Well, that's not working. And you see, the problem is yellow pretty much knows he's not going to get anything. Purple pretty much knows he's not going to get anything from the election. So there's really not much to go here. Red, and to some extent blue, have been well treated by Clinton in that alliance. They don't feel terribly bad about him. So, and it's not like he's a terribly effective president. He doesn't have a very large group, which means he's not going to be able to assign a lot of positions. Harrison, if he's president, could throw positions, to all sorts of people that he has. Harrison's not very good, though, so he really can't dominate that way, and blue doesn't have the votes to dominate the whole thing, but blue and red could sort of split things. That might be appealing to red. Maybe. Let's see if blue... See, the danger here is if red switches horses in midstream and they can't win, I don't think Clinton's going to be too thrilled with them. But they may have to work with them anyway just because of the votes. So you know what? Red is tempted by the Harrison proposal. Very tempted. I think they may start supporting him. Polk threw his support to Harrison. He knows he can't win. He has one state that he has any possibility to have any value of getting a vote in, which is Tennessee. He threw it towards Harrison. In addition, he wouldn't have been able to win it anyway. The truth is that Red had 2 votes there that they were throwing to Harrison anyway. So no harm in that, right? And after all the states have voted, let's clear the green stuff off so we can count more easily. It looks like Clinton may have won just by a squeaker, 5-3, yeah. So Clinton managed to take the presidency again. There's definitely some ill will here towards red, but the blue player, Harrison, kind of feels like, geez, if we had cut this deal a little earlier, but that's really his own gripe. He didn't think of it in time. He didn't realize, and some votes were already cast. So, second round of the Clinton, or second term of the Clinton presidency. As we get closer and closer to the end of the game, it becomes more important to be aware of the overall positioning. And here we see Polk has ended up way in the lead at 41. Van Buren's at 37. These are the 2 weakest, but in terms of current political clout on the board in some ways, but they're both the party leaders, and that actually allows them some ability to generate some points, mainly just in the sense that they can convert these into points by using the population support or popularity support, by using the make a speech and just spending their influence to keep getting more and more popularity. It's just a couple points. You know, it's basically a point a turn max, but that's a lot of value. And for Polk in particular, he's got enough of a lead. He wants to pump this thing up as soon as he can, because he doesn't have a lot of, if he gets rid of this influence, he doesn't have a lot of minuses sitting on him, and he'll do what he can to keep that trimmed down. Interesting thing, we see yellow, which everybody saw as the big bugaboo before, while blue has surpassed yellow at this point in terms of total. And, well, green is next down there. Not too big a threat. Red is obviously still trailing in last. They just haven't gotten the presidencies or whatever to accumulate a lot of popularity. As we bubble to the end of this second DeWitt Clinton term, we look at nothing too much happened. The biggie is this has ended up not in a dominating position anymore, which means we're going to have a Knox Van Buren election. I don't know how good that is. That looks good for Van Buren just on the face value of it, because remember, the Northeast has done okay, but selection of the running mate is important. But we're back out of that, you know, all conservatives all the time, 8 different candidates type crap. We're going to be down to 4 candidates. Clinton, not in terribly good shape. I don't know what he spent one on. He probably shouldn't have, probably on a die roll or something. The winning bid went to Van Buren, but he didn't get an additional popularity out of it. Knox was going to get the bid for 1 and be able to do that. He could buy it no matter what. And he's in the lead already, so people don't want to allow him to have that. He probably should have bid more than 1, make it a little more painful to take it away from him, but he's not that clever. All right, well, on to the next turn. Okay, one thing I was wondering about was whether there were what-if cards in here, and here's one here, the Ostend Manifesto, which would have allowed the U.S. to purchase Cuba from Spain. Now, it looks very appealing in a lot of ways, goes to the Secretary of State, but quite frankly, Clinton looks around at the different people he can make Secretary of State, and the only person, Polk could definitely handle it. I could hand this off and punt it over to Scott. He's not quite good enough. Lincoln would be good enough, but that would eat up my one off-party option. And I'm just not seeing too much chance of this succeeding, and too much willingness to try to knock some heads together to get it to succeed. When if I ignore it, it just goes as a 0. So that's what we're going to do there. We'll draw another one. And this one is Louisiana. Requires Louisiana purchase. Can we get this by? Maybe, maybe not. I know one person has a Louisiana card. We may be able to work out a kind of, yeah, we'll let you pass some things. Green is not in the front rank, but they're doing fairly well. So there might not be a lot of huge desire to get green passing things. The problem isn't so much green as blue. Blue has jumped well into the points, and at this late in the stage, red is saying, look, I'm really not in favor of giving offices to blue, who is among the higher tier people at this point. I'm doing significantly worse than anybody. You're almost as bad as I am. Maybe we could get everybody to just let us, spoof this off at this point. and that hasn't been happening. There's certainly no desire for these guys to see points going into Blue's hands. So basically what is happening is Red's unwillingness is kind of pushed an attempt to get a deal elsewhere, but I feel like Red may give one more thought towards handing it. Yeah, they'll go along with a deal helping Clinton here, with an agreement by Blue to generally support, and that Green may end up with another office out of this. Unlikely, but maybe. The problem, though, is Clinton doesn't have any more prestige, and he can't get this next state, which is Minnesota, passed. He doesn't have influence. I'm sorry, he doesn't have enough influence to pass it. And I guess the same goes for Wisconsin. I feel like I may be missing a couple of states here. I don't remember seeing Mississippi ever come up. Maybe I'm mistaken. Certainly if I don't see it in the deck, we got an issue there. But yeah, here's a situation where if somebody doesn't give me an influence marker, and Red's not going to go along with Blue getting more popularity, and Red doesn't have an influence marker to spare, Clinton doesn't have one to spare, so another state fails to be created, and that looks like that's the end of his presidency. He'll be able to score some points, but he wasn't able to gain what he hoped from it. The one advantage he has, though, is he can make Rufus King and Franklin Pierce, who is damn near unelectable because of the geography. New Englanders are just not easy to put into office. So, even though Pierce historically was elected, one of the worst presidents, I disagree. He's one of the coolest. He looks like a drunkard. Not in this picture, he looks, but in it, some from his presidency. His own party dumped him from the ticket after just one turn. He was a drunkard. Okay, so we'll move forward with the Treasury and see what the next election is going to be. Because we weren't able to get this forward. Oh, geez, maybe I had... No, I definitely don't want any panics there. I was thinking maybe I had an ability to generate some influence, but I had checked already. All right, let's see what, yeah, we know what the election's going to be because we're not there. It's going to involve Polk and Van Buren, and both of them are in an interesting position where they get to choose a running mate who, one of their main concerns is a running mate who will not defeat them. But another potential concern would be stopping the opponent there, which might mean a running mate who will defeat them, just to prevent, Knox and Van Buren are two of the leading players, or representing two of the leading players, and they don't have the ability to reach deeper into their own structure of friends or whatever. Van Buren had to pick first, and rather than, he believes he has a pretty good chance, just from the electoral policies, but or positioning. He picked Zach Taylor on the idea of, well, he's the least bad option, basically, in terms of someone who, if he wins, it's okay with me. It doesn't necessarily put him in the strongest position, I think, to defeat Polk, but it does give a neat option, because Polk starts here in Tennessee, and Taylor starts in Kentucky, which is kind of close by, might be able to beat him out, might be able to work in conjunction with the Northerner Van Buren to close some options out to Taylor. I'm not sure. Well, Taylor's response, Polk's response was to nominate Millard Fillmore as his vice presidential candidate. Fillmore gives me that same New York position and allows for kind of a cluster in the Northeast, which may be good, may be bad, but with Taylor in place here, I may lose. It's likely I'm going to lose the race for the Big East. So I need somebody there to help seal the East off from, the threat of Taylor taking it all. If the Big East is the win, well, it looks likely to me that Van Buren may beat out Fillmore, but not guaranteed. They may end up close enough. They may end up tying, essentially, in which case it gets thrown into the House, and it's likely that the non-party leader, because the party leaders are aligned with the most valuable folk, will win. Clinton, this is his second term. He's done. I could actually ship off his points at this point. The one advantage, though, is the conservatives have first play, so they can kind of push forward a little bit more quickly in some cases. What that means exactly, though, isn't clear. So the Carolinas are very valuable, but I don't think I want to go that way. I think I want to follow Taylor into Kentucky and try to take as much of the Northeast as I can. The problem here really is I think that there's a likelihood that we're going to end up with a tied vote. Seeing kind of develop is Polk running up along with Taylor, while the two New Yorkers shove their way down and pretty much seal off the Northeast. The question, of course, then becomes, what about Taylor's next move? It's into Virginia. The reason for that is Van Buren won't get into Virginia. Fillmore will get into Virginia. And that probably means Fillmore's going to win this. It's just a matter of, hey, we got to make sure that one of the two leading guys doesn't make it. And allowing Fillmore in doesn't make a lot of sense. Allowing Van Buren in doesn't make a lot of sense. Taylor wants, and especially since Fillmore is of his party, of his player faction, he wants to support him in this way. And by sealing this off, Fillmore, as the vice president from the more powerful party, gets to slip in instead. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Polk has the opportunity to go into Virginia and cut the party into two voting blocks. And if he does that, what we're probably looking at is a tie that puts the strength over on Taylor instead of Fillmore. And that's kind of an interesting question. Would I rather see another conservative in the White House, or do I want a liberal? If I get a liberal in there, what does that mean? No matter what, I'm not getting any benefit out of it. Fillmore, as the conservative, can kind of stack the House in his favor, but he might end up helping blue and green to some extent. It is even possible, no matter what color, that it goes towards yellow. The danger with Taylor is the only person whom he can get help from safely is maybe blue. Now remember, blue's doing fairly well. So that's kind of a disturbing prospect there, which is that the votes might end up, that positions will have to be allocated, and a number of them have to go to blue and or yellow. So that's a scary option if I close this off, because it looks very unlikely. it's going to end up a tie. We're both basically, two candidates have the southern part, two candidates have the northern part. But if I let Fillmore through, it doesn't necessarily end up as a tie. And that's an intriguing proposition. Had I counted the votes beforehand, which any good electoral person should do, I would have noticed it wouldn't make a difference. Van Buren got 128 votes, which beats out Taylor, who managed to sweep the South with 120. But Fillmore ends up in the lead. That guarantees, among other things, that, well, there would be some possibility, I suppose, that Van Buren might be able to, through play of a card, be able to get some more points. As it stands, though, I think the only person with a card that could help was this guy over here. So we're going to see Millard Fillmore as our president and Van Buren as our vice president, if we're not careful. Do we want to give Van Buren that extra point of prestige for vice presidency? Yeah, why not? I have a card that I could have defeated him in New York and put somebody else as vice president. But I feel like purple is not in the lead, orange is in the lead. Giving him the 1 point gives me a safety. He's a person I can throw a lousy issue at anyway. So he may lose whatever, he gains from this, or even worse. So I'm willing to stand for this, and nobody else is going to oppose it particularly. And as we finish things up here, in the Fillmore first term for the, well, I guess this is before January 20th or whatever, right? People are much more reticent about spending their influence at this point. Van Buren did, and Polk with his piles did. But everyone else felt like, we failed completely to be able to do anything to score points for stuff because we were burning our influence. Polk actually burned some on moving newspaper support into place. He's a little worried that this is falling and could end up on the liberal side if he's not careful. So he wants to make sure that doesn't happen, because his power, whatever power he has, comes from keeping it kind of in the mid-conservative range. He can't have it into the dominance, because then he'll be facing too many opponents. But he doesn't have much chance of getting the presidency, because his faction of just him is too powerful. He would love to do so, as would Van Buren, for the simple fact that then they get to take another statesman, once they're done with the presidency. They get to enter the game again with a statesman and maybe some popularity. Probably not. But, if you look at some of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you look over here at yellow, 2, 4, 6, if that's my pick, and I'm not sure what the allowable picks are, there is no option that doesn't give something, either a popularity or the Chief Justice. So that's would be a tough call to have to give up one of those. Having to give up either Bell or Breckinridge, these guys are okay to lose, I suppose.